listening to the Nerdy Reads podcast, a hipster goblin media production.
Hey, welcome to the Nerdy Reads podcast. And today we are excited. We are talking about a book. We're starting this. This is week one of Grady Hendrix' new one, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, where we are going to cover the first two parts. And so Grady Hendrix, we love Grady Hendrix here. He's a dude who writes a lot of it's spooky horror, but it's also pretty fun. So we've covered actually one of his books here and read several others. So we're excited to jump into today's book. So Robert, give us the rundown on Witchcraft for Wayward Girls and where we're at currently.
Can I just go and say I'm excited to be covering this one? Like you mentioned, Grady Hendrix, one of my favorite authors. I've read a lot of his work. I'm stoked for this one. It's about a 15-year-old girl in the 70s, and she ends up pregnant, and her parents ship her off to the Wayward house where she finds other pregnant teenagers there, and their parents hide them off from society and force them to give their babies up for adoption and then forget any of this process ever happened. So that's the premise. That's where we're at. I'm ready to dive in, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty much a situation where they get the quote unquote opportunity to start over. You know, it's a clean slate because, and I tell you one thing that is very evident here is that, it's very much a go back in time, go back in the past. And it takes place in a time where it was, it's very kind of dark and very sad when you think about how, young pregnant girls were treated back in those days. And so you see all that in this, and they get shipped off to this place where they're, because parents don't want to be embarrassed. And really you see that even in the get-go of this, where the dad just treats her like straight dirt.
Yeah, I mean, they're on their way to the Wayward house when the book opens, and she's just in the car with her dad. He's going to drop her off, and the whole time he's just like distant, mean. He snaps at her at one point. He goes as far as to not be embarrassed by her at a gas station when she needs to stop and use the restroom. He like thrusts his wedding ring at her, and he's like, "Put this on."
Yeah.
Because that, people see someone pregnant back in the 70s. I guess their first thing was, hey, let's look at the the ring finger and see if they're married while they're pregnant. I wasn't alive in the 70s like my co-host, so I don't know if that's really how it was.
Hey, bro, I wasn't either. So, hey, we're learning.
We are learning. I think that's what Grady Hendrix has done a great job, though, with this first. We've only covered the first two parts. So he's really known for like taking real life situations, but putting like this kind of B-movie horror in there somewhere. So like when we covered How to Sell a Haunted House, it was kind of like family trauma, but you had this haunted puppet off at the side.
Sure. Yeah.
So I know this one right now, we have this very serious matter of pregnant teenagers in the 70s, how they're being treated. But later on, as the name would, presume, there's going to be witchcraft. We haven't gotten there yet. The first two parts is very much kind of laying groundwork. We're learning more about how the Wayward house works, what it's like to, basically be a pregnant 15-year-old in the 70s, and that's where the horror part of this novel starts anyway. Because, dude, it would be terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in the jump, I have down here that Florida sucks because Fern shares my hatred for Florida. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, her situation and mine are totally different. If you're from Florida and you listen to this, hey, we appreciate you. But Florida is like one of my least favorite places to go. And she wasn't happy about being there either.
Nah, she wasn't happy about being there at all, dude. It's humid. It's gross. Her parents are dropping her off, and very much what happens, dude. They kind of go on that road trip, and during that road trip, she gives the backstory, and it goes even as far as like the guy she hooked up with when she told him like, "Hey, I'm pregnant." He's like, "How can you do this to me?" Yeah. And it's like, come on, bro.
It's crazy. It's crazy. But honestly, I don't know. We've been young, and I think both of us have had friends who were young parents, even people who were high school. And I remember at times that being sort of the mindset that the dude from some of our friends that were guys, where it's like, my life is ruined. It's over. Like, I can't believe that this happened or how they did this to me, that kind of thing. And, you know, when you think about it, it's just so selfish. And
yeah, it's a selfish young mindset.
It is very much so. And not everybody's that way. I'm not trying to throw everybody under the bus, but I've seen it. And so when you see that, it's like very believable. Like, and I'm sure that during that time period is probably even more believable, considering the fact that they're even talking about, like you said, every time they're at the gas station, there's no ring, you know, and everybody's looking for the ring. And she feels like everybody's giving her dirty looks when they see her out and about, when they could tell that she's pregnant. And so, yeah, we're getting it. Like you said, that is kind of the horror of this book at this current moment. It's just the treatment of these girls.
Exactly. And, you know, you hit the nail on the head when you said Florida sucks. So, I mean, I'm already terrified. 15-year-old pregnant girl. It's the 70s and she's in Florida. I mean, I don't know how it gets worse.
All of this is nightmare fuel. Every bit of it.
Absolutely, dude.
Well, they get to the house, and you know what I thought was kind of interesting is, you know, she goes through the front. So they get there. She gets there with her dad. And, you know, we've covered a lot about that trip, awkward trip. They get there and it's just as awkward. They walk in and I think it was Rose that was the first person she saw.
Yeah.
And then they go through the front door and the lady who starts talking to them is very clear about it. She goes, hey, like, you came through the front door. You will not use the front door again until you leave here to deliver your child. And then maybe again, once you're out of here forever, essentially. And so it's kind of a weird, I don't know what that's about, but that's a very, that kind of threw me a little bit. I'm like, wait.
I think it's symbolizing, like, you know, you enter here as this person, but when you leave, you're someone else type deal is how I took it.
Yeah, there you go. That's good.
They even go as far as, like, all these girls basically get gifted a fake identity. They're not allowed to talk about who they really are. They all have fake names. So you don't even know, like Rose you mentioned. Fern doesn't even know if Rose is Rose. Like, and I'm sure as these girls bond and we get further in, we're going to learn a little bit more about these side characters, which I'm actually looking forward to diving into, especially one that we'll talk about a little later. But yeah, I think that front door thing's just that kind of, you enter as this person, but you're leaving as someone else.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And then, like you were kind of pointing out, you were starting to kind of lean into that. The cast in this so far has been very good.
Yeah.
I even like the fact that so they get there, and one thing that they're told is that, hey, you can't give your name, your real name. You can't share anything about who you are and where you're from. So, you know, she ends up being called Fern. I guess all the girls, and maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm wrong on this, but it seems like they're all named after plants. Essentially, you got like, maybe, I don't know. Close.
Well, there's Rose, Fern, Holly.
Yeah.
But then there's like random names like Myrtle. I don't know if there's a Myrtle plant out there.
We'll have to Google. Hey, I'm gonna have to Google that. I'll Google that while you're talking about something here in a few minutes. So we got Fern, and they're like, you're from Baltimore. But the one thing I think all these girls seem to be clinging to is they keep asking each other, what's your sign?
Yeah.
Because that's
astrology.
Good astrology. Yeah. Because it's like the thing that I guess they can talk about. That's who they actually are, you know? That's at least what I gathered from that. It's like, and I'm sure there's something else to it, but
I think the one girl even goes so far as say like, oh, you're like a Libra or whatever. Like we won't get along very well. Like that stuff too. Like kind of making their astrology their personality type deal. Yeah, but that's a good.
Yeah, there's a myrtle plant. Yep.
All right, dude, you found it. They're all named after plants.
It's an evergreen shrub.
Well, you know what? That makes sense because I didn't even pick up on it. Miss Wellwood does call the girls her garden, like her garden of girls.
Yeah.
And then names them all flowers. See, that's creepy.
So everybody here who's listening to this right now and has read this is probably like, these dudes are so dumb.
That's what's fun about talking about a book with your bro, man. You pick up on stuff you didn't see.
Facts.
100%. But we, I guess very early on, Rose kind of gets the reputation as like the mean girl of the group, like the rebel. And another thing of note is it's the 70s, so these girls have like designated smoke breaks while they're pregnant, which, dude, in today's society, you're getting crucified if you're smoking while you're pregnant. But back then, is the norm.
Well, I'm guessing the 60s and 70s, if I don't know if people knew how bad that was. People just smoked to smoke and it was cool and fun. And now we're all like, you're going to die. Just different.
So the first real scene we get after Mrs. Wellwood kind of lays out all the rules with everyone. They have the meal. They're all sitting at like a table, and it's like a mandated, like every meal we're all going to sit here at this table. And they kind of let the girls know, like, you don't get any salt with your food for whatever reason. I can't remember the reason. I think one girl was like messed it up for everybody, something or other. And then
it's a punishment.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's like, hey, somebody did something bad, so now no one gets salt on their food. That's brutal.
That's basically it. So all the food's like bland and tastes the same. But later that night, Fern got a room, and we met like the most interesting character to me so far in the book is Holly. She's like a little girl with a birthmark on her face who doesn't talk. And I immediately was like, man, here we go, bro. I don't need a backstory about what happened to this little girl and why she's in here, because she's far younger than the other girls, right? I think they said she was 12.
Yeah.
So, I know we're going to have some depresso situations later with that one, but Holly is the character I'm most interested about right now.
Sure. Well, I think it's safe to say that, I'm sure we're going to eventually see some little beacons of, fun and things like that because it's Grady Hendrix. But right now, to be honest, like everybody's backstory is probably going to be sad.
It is. Yeah. You know what? It's sad boy winter reading.
It is 100%. I think Rose is an interesting character too, though.
Oh yeah, she is.
To be honest, I think, which I agree. I think Holly is, but Rose is just she's so unique and different compared to all the other girls. Like she's like that. She's like, I'm keeping my baby, like, because the whole thing is, she goes, I didn't sign anything. I don't even know if we've talked about that yet. They make them sign over their right.
Oh, they do. Yeah.
Like that's like one of the, who is it? The social worker, basically, or nurse, or no, it's a social worker.
It's a social worker. Yeah.
She goes to her doctor's appointment,
which made me uncomfortable, bro.
Because the doctor says some very creepy things. He's a weird doctor. I don't know. I don't get that. But, not to like, nothing like weird really happens. It's just the way that the whole thing happens.
The way he talks to her too. Like,
it's just, but it seems like everything just, I guess, was what happens at those things, I guess. I don't know.
It's more, I guess there's like a dignity thing about it for Fern. Like he tells her like, hey, you need to undress and get up, on the table. I have to check you. And she's like modest about it. And he's like, no, I mean, if you would have kept your legs shut in the first place, you wouldn't be here. And he said it in a very rude way. And then the whole scene just gave me the heebie-jeebies. And it jacked me up. And then right after that happens, she meets that social worker, Diane. And Diane's like real nice and comes off as your bro, but it's like, it's kind of a ruse. She's like the good cop to the other people in the Wellwoods home's bad cop. Because she's like being your friend and being nice, but she's like, oh, yeah, you're going to sign and give this baby up. Don't you want to go back to the way things were and forget any of this ever happened? Like,
yeah. And then when she took a little pause, because like even, Fern pauses, she's like, I don't, and there's a little like monologue where you could sense that she's like, wait, do I want to do this? Kind of thing. And even that lady's like, what's troubling you, dear? Basically, like, still continuing to kind of push her to do it, and until she does, and eventually she signs. And so I'm sure we'll see more about that at some point down the line. But our homie Rose apparently didn't sign nothing.
So. Nah, Rose ain't signing anything, but
she's going to go live in a farm.
She was going to go. She had this like idyllic fantasy of the life she'll lead as a mother, like just, off the grid essentially. But they also use scare tactics in the Wellwood house. Like it's almost like tricking these girls to giving their babies up in a way. Like they mention Ivy as one of the girls who decided to keep the baby. And they're like, oh, and she had this terrible life after it. Right.
Yeah.
So It's weird. I'm wondering if these babies actually end up getting adopted into other homes or if there's something more sinister going on because it is Grady Hendrix.
Yeah, there's something. There's something going on. I mean, you're right about that. That letter was in like when they talked about Ivy, and I feel like most of the girls believe it, but was it Rose that was like that letter? That's the same one every week. They hold it up every time, and but yeah, so I'm with you. I'm kind of curious as to what happens to these babies too, because they're very much like there's families out there that really want these babies, and it's like, all this seems very, very odd. And like you said, it's Grady Hendrix, so something's gonna happen.
It is, and we have there's this cast of girls, and Fern, as she's been there longer, starting to kind of figure out their ticks. Like Tansy's a ballerina, Jasmine liked the astrology a lot. There's one lady, I can't remember her name, but she was like, I want to be a lifeguard, so they don't make her work because she has to work on her tan instead. Daisy's one of the girls who's like actually excited to give her kid away because her dad says she can have a puppy when she comes home, like weird stuff like that. And then Myrtle was an interesting character because Myrtle just says the whole time she's fat, she's not pregnant.
Right.
And she was an interesting character too. She kind of got into it over someone because they had their DS stolen. And at first I was like, Nintendo in the 70s? But it was dietary supplements, what the girls call their hidden stash of food. And Myrtle's ends up getting stolen, and Rose loses her mind because someone steals her cigarettes and lighter, and like all the girls kind of have their little fight. But it turns out Fern stole Rose's cigarette and lighter, and Fern's trying to carve her own path of who she is in this home, because it is very much like fend for yourself type situation. There's not a whole lot of sister solidarity here.
Yeah, I think that we're seeing quickly that Fern is adapting. She adapted pretty quickly in this first two parts. Like obviously, like there's still things, but like the night that Rose was just continually farting, and it was like upsetting her. And Rose just kept passing gas and then making little jokes and sly comments. I think Fern's just she's just realizing like I'm gonna have to make some changes. I've got to do something if I'm gonna survive here. I'm gonna have to become something that I wasn't before.
Which is pretty big for a 15-year-old to get to so quick, because the way the book's written in parts, each part is like a certain week of the pregnancy. And
which I think I do like that.
I do too. I think we're at 27 weeks with Fern. And the whole time she's been here, something we didn't mention, the doctor, the social worker, Miss Wellwood, they're all like, oh no, childbirth doesn't hurt. Oh, you'll be fine. There's medicines now. You don't feel a thing. Everything's good. I've never had a kid. Know what I mean? My wife has, and it didn't look like it was fine, even with the medication. Yeah. So they lying to this chick. Well, Myrtle, who everybody thought was, who Myrtle said she was just fat, not pregnant. Later, as we get to the end of our coverage, Fern walks into the bathroom to this harrowing scene of Myrtle having a kid right there in the bathroom, like full on screaming, blood anywhere, going nuts. Mm-hmm. And Fern had this realization that Miss Wellwood was misleading not only her, but all the girls about how modern medicine had advanced to the point to where childbirth is painless. So Fern was like, well, not only are they lying about this, I'm never going to see anyone in this house ever again.
Yeah.
And that's and that was where it ended. And it ended in a way where I was like, dang, man, like I want it to keep going, because I'm interested to see where this story goes, essentially.
Yeah. And if you happen to stumble upon this, or you listen to us just to listen to us sometimes, we didn't give anything away that I think is like spoilerific by any means. I mean, we talked about the first two parts. We have no clue what's going on. But based on what we know of Grady Hendrix and based on what we have read so far, this one is sure to be a great book from him, and I kind of recommend you jump on and read it with us. So so far there's enough here, and like we were talking about with the parts, the 26, and we just had a baby, and I remember us sitting there counting down weeks and stuff. So when I saw that's how they broke the parts up, I was like, that's pretty cool. Like That's a pretty cool way to do it. Very creative. So excited to see what happens here. All right, man.
Too, man.
You got 3 words?
I do, dude. Mine's going to be Florida or pregnancy in a context of which one's scarier.
Dad's a douche.
Yeah.
Come on.
He's a big douche, bro. 100%, man.
He didn't even say bye.
He didn't, dude. Left his daughter at a house. She still has the wedding ring of note, which she kind of uses to hold on to her former life a little bit.
Yeah.
But man, what a douche your dad is. 100%. Shout out Grady Hendrix. Love your work. I think you did a great job drawing me into this book. And everyone, this first 2 parts is very much like an introductory to Fern, to her friends around her, to the Wellwood home and the way things work. So I'm really excited to be back next week and see what we unveil as we read the next 2 parts.
Yes. All right, guys. Well, that's going to be it. Keep in mind, we're going to keep on going with this one. We got probably 3 more episodes talking through Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. So we're going to cover this bit by bit. So read along with us, if you will. And we will see you guys next time for Witchcraft for Wayward Girls. Peace.